After more than a decade of war, the U.S. and Afghanistan are reaching an agreement spelling out details about American involvement going forward. Well, here's the big headline. U.S. is still going to be helping both financially and militarily for 10 years after troops formally withdraw in 2014. The agreement, not a done deal yet. It has to go through several levels of review, including President Obama's approval. But the president wants an agreement signed before the NATO summit on May 21st. I want to bring in former Defense Secretary William Cohen, who joins me from D.C., and he is the head of the Cohen Group, international consulting firm, represents defense contractors and others. Good to see you, Bill. First of all, we see that neither side is really releasing specifics about this agreement, but it does say that there is a pledge, at least in principle here, that there will be financial and military support for 10 years after 2014 withdrawal. How important is that to the Afghans?
Well, I think it's important to send the signal that the United States, unlike Russia, is not simply going to depart and leave them to fend for themselves against the Taliban and others. And so the signal being sent is we're there for a longer period of time. I think that will be conditioned, frankly, upon others joining with us. The United States is not going to make a long 10-year term commitment without support from our allies. And so I think that's why the president wanted to make sure this could be signed before May 10th so that NATO allies could also be a part of this and also indicate their support. But it does represent that we're going to be shrinking our forces. We're going to reduce them substantially so that we're not pursuing a counterinsurgency strategy any longer, but one of counterterrorism. A much smaller footprint will keep us in the area, but much smaller numbers, and also able to go across border, as we've been doing in terms of dealing with the Taliban on the other side in Pakistan.
Bill, is there a potential danger here that if we have our troops, even if they act as advisors, that they could get sucked into combat once again if you've got the Taliban once again resurging?
That's always a possibility, and that's why it's going to be important that we also have the support of our traditional allies. Those allies have been cutting back their own defense expenditures, and so the real test is going to be, are you going to make a comparable commitment to making sure that Afghanistan doesn't become the home or haven for terrorists who will once again launch terrorist attacks against either European cities or against the United States. And so we'll have to get a commitment from our allies. We're not going to be the only ones who are committed to countering terrorism throughout the world, and specifically in that part of the world.
How significant is this, that you have this diplomatic agreement here in light of the tension between the United States and the Afghan government and the Afghan people? The recent incidents where you have some U.S. Troops who were urinating on corpses, they were burning Qurans, and you had this sergeant who went after Afghan civilians. Does this say something significant about our relationship with Afghanistan moving forward?
I think it says something significant about the fact that we've had our troops who've been committed, some as many as 4 or 5 tours in an environment which is totally unique in terms of the kind of combat they have to wage. It's taking a toll on our men and women in uniform, and we're seeing the kind of excesses and breakdowns that can occur. It's also a question of command control. It's very difficult when you have small numbers that are deployed in the most mountainous regions to have really solid oversight control, but there seems to be something of a breakdown in the command and control structure in Afghanistan, and that's wearing upon our troops. And so I think what we have to do is to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves, don't put this kind of stress upon our men and women in uniform, try to reduce the number of deployments that they have to endure, and to make sure we take care of them and their families. So I think that's really the nature of what's happened. And obviously in Afghanistan, you have people who are concerned. We are a foreign force in their country. And so that's another element involved. And I think what's happened is the president has come up with a solution, namely to really downsize the size of our commitment. We're going to go from $120 billion a year down to numbers that are talked about, 2.8, maybe 3 or 4. Quite a substantial reduction in terms of the commitment by the United States.
All right, Secretary Cohen, Bill, good to see you, as always. Thank you. So woke up many Californians who were sleeping. They were so scared they called 911.